Hello and welcome back everyone to Master Blender 3D with Wild West environment. In the last lesson, we left ourselves the front section to be left with a nice proportion to work with. We're going to continue on with the setup, and now we're going to think about the upper section of the roof. So this part over here. And I'd like to ideally start off by getting these windows out of the way first, so we know exactly where we need to position them. And for that, I think the best option for us would be to grab the block in the back. This one is going to go to be a very good initial point to know a reference, let's say, for the scale of a window. It doesn't have to be exact, but I'm going to just duplicate it, click GY, move it off to the side, and there we go. We got ourselves first window. But of course, well, it needs to be changed up, and we can think about the scaling and whatnot. So how much space are we working with here? I think we can definitely, well, for starters, make it smaller. I'm going to just click SX and make it quite a bit smaller. Click SZ, increase the scale. Is that good enough? Well, let's check with this human over here. We'd assume there is a second floor and it's just going to be standing and watching over, for example. And I think for now that's going to be quite enough for the setup. Maybe a little bit wider, but that's pretty much it. The roof itself will have some space, I reckon, to move upwards. But yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're going to now move one duplicate to another side. So we know there is going to be a window over here. And this part, we want this to be going on this section of the roof. So essentially, we're going to make a partial symmetry for the section. So imagine there is going to be a properly set up roof over here. We want an extension within the middle part of this roof. And we're going to have two windows on both sides. Of course, there's going to be a massive gap over here, but we're going to just fill this in with additional support, have a bit of an extra prop over on the side and all of that good stuff. But all in all, that's essentially the setup that we're going to go with. All right, so let's have a look about this setup. We're just going to grab a cube, extend it, and leave it as is. I would say it would go like 50% inwards in regards to the main roof shape. I think that's a reasonable setup. So let's go ahead and make a, you know what, let's make a new cube. So we just have a fresh cube like so, and we can just position it like this over here. Now the question is if it's going to be big enough or not. It's hard to see from the top view, but I'm just going to go ahead and turn on a render view just to see the shadow a little bit. And I think that's a little bit, is it a little bit too big? I wouldn't say so. I would lower this down a little bit. And yeah, you know what? I'll just make it a little bit smaller, push it inwards as well. And so it would have a bit of an extra gap on the top, and then we can work our way with that. There is going to be a sign at the front, which we're going to be working on and whatnot, but general proportions, I think, are quite important, especially when it comes to like the smaller parts. Once we start setting them up, we definitely need to think about all of that. This roof is, yeah, it is a little bit too small now that I see that we have additional space for these windows. We can move them upwards a little bit. We can move this entire piece just a little bit higher. And there we go. I think that's much nicer. All right. So just to make sure we remember how it's going to look like, we are going to go ahead and add, yeah, we're definitely going to add some supports just to make sure we know what we're doing with them afterwards. I'm just going to go ahead and move them off onto the side, make them reasonably scaled, like this, then scale them upwards. And yeah, I'd want the origin point to be at the bottom probably. And I'll just go ahead and do that probably. I'll go on to edit mode, click on the snapping tool, to the face, GZ. So it would snap to the top section actually. That's going to be easier for us. And now we can just select the bottom piece, go and snap it to the bottom. And there we go. We got ourselves a nice setup. It's just using snapping mode, which allows us to control it based on whichever snapping criteria we want. In this case, we're snapping to the faces of this staircase and the rooftop. Well, whilst doing that, keep in mind that if you are moving it, it's going to be based on your cursor. So let's say I want this to be touching the side or the bottom piece of the window. If I click GZ, I can move it. Nothing's going to happen here. But once I start moving my... Oh, sorry, let me just turn on the snapping mode. There we go. Once I start moving it, my cursor towards this section over here, you see it starts snapping. Or over here, it basically snaps to wherever the cursor is. So whilst moving, just make sure you position the cursor properly. All right, so this part over here, I reckon can be a little bit inwards. Something like this. Oh, let me turn off the snapping mode. Something like this, I think is going to be quite okay. Yeah, something like this. I'll reposition some parts if needed afterwards. Then, of course, we're going to duplicate this, GX, move it off to the other side. And there we go. We now know how much space we got to work with the setup. All right. We can now think about the inside parts of these front sections. And we can start off, honestly, I want to start off with the table, probably the largest part that's going to be positioned inside in the middle of the room, and then we can build around the overall setup. And for that, I am just going to go ahead and create a cube like so. Click SZ, make it thinner, probably even thinner like that. At this point, it doesn't matter too much because again, we're blocking it out. I'm going to move it up next to like where the belly button would be of a person, next to its waist, maybe a little bit lower like this. SY, lower this down, maybe make it thinner even, something like this. Not worried too much about the setup at the moment, just making sure the scale is nicely set up. I do want to have a pillar right in the middle of this these two. The easiest way I can think of doing that would be if I grab if I make the 3D cursor to be centered between those two. So what we can do is we can grab holding shift the two of the pillars and then click shift and S and get the cursor to selected. This way it's going to be between those two origin points. We can then click shift D and make a duplicate out of this. And afterwards we can click shift S again and selection to cursor. There we go. This way, this is going to be right in the center between those two pillars. Now we know what we are working with. All right. So in terms of the setup, I'm wondering whether or not we have enough space for the chairs, the stools. So if we have a look over here, we have some stools over on the side. And we have stools over here, basically, in front of the bar. So for that, we need to determine how big the stools are, if we need to move everything a little bit to the back or not, or if this is more than enough of a space for us to work with. Or maybe alternatively, we can just extend this part as well. That would be also an option. So I'm thinking whether or not we should do that. Well, let's create a base setup, base shape for a stool. I'm going to create a cylinder, going to click SZ, make a flatter surface, scale it down. Let's see what we have so far. All right, I'm just going to make another cylinder actually. Just have these two like so. I'm going to use the isolation mode, the dash. That is, then just simply set something up like this. And from there, we can start working on the scale. I'm not too worried about the setup or what kind of stool I'm using at the moment. The main thing I want to do is just get the base shape out of the way, make sure that the scaling and whatnot is fitting for the setup. And let's see, how close to the bar would they be? Well, we don't want them to be overlapping. We want to have some space for a person to sit, basically. So if we have a look at this, where the leg thickness is, something like this, they'd be sitting and hanging their feet over here. I think that's quite enough. This is overlapping with the section, so I don't really want this. I'm going to grab these pillars and the table a little bit like so, GY, move them a little bit to the back, or actually and the chair as well. GY, move it everything just a tiny bit to the back, like so. And even further. There we go, enough space in the back. Just a little more. There we go. This way, if we have a look at it, we do have a lot of space to work with here. Okay, I'm quite happy with this result. I'm going to just move them off to the side. Or you know what? I will create the base over here for the table, so we know what is going on with this. The easiest way is to go onto edit mode, select this base, click I for inset, and then extrude downwards. And there we go. We now know just the base shape of the setup. There is going to be a wall over here. I'm not doing that just yet because we're able to get an additional bit of detail in these parts. Now we need to decide whether or not we want a shelf over here, which of course we do. Looking at the reference, we want the bottles to be placed, and we want the mirror over here. We want some bottles to be placed over here. I think we can continue on with all of that in the next lesson though. So yeah, this is a good place to end the lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.